All right, let's talk about Washington, D.C. You see it on the news every single day. The monuments, the politics, all that power. But what if I told you that's really only half the story? Hiding right there, in plain sight, is a totally different city. A real hometown with its own vibrant culture and a political fight for its very existence that's been raging for over 2 centuries. Today, we're going to dive deep into the two faces of Washington, D.C.
So let's just start with what seems like a super simple question. What is Washington, D.C.? I mean, is it a city? Is it a state? Something else entirely? Well, as it turns out, the answer is way more complicated and honestly, way more fascinating than you might think.
First up, you've got the DC that everybody knows. It's the symbolic heart of the entire nation. When you picture the White House or the Capitol Dome, you're seeing the grand stage for America's political drama. This is the federal city, the one that in theory belongs to all Americans.
But then there's the other DC, the one the locals just call home. It's a city with its own distinct sound, a native music called go-go. It's got its own flavor, like the famous half-smoked sausage. And it has a political identity that was forged in this relentless fight for self-governance, something known as home rule. This isn't just a bunch of federal buildings, it is a living, breathing city.
So, how did this split personality even happen? Well, it's because DC isn't like other cities that just sort of grew organically over time. No, it was invented. It was literally created in a backroom political deal between the founding fathers.
The core idea, which came from James Madison, was actually pretty simple, but also kind of radical. The new federal government couldn't just be a guest in someone else's house. It couldn't be located inside a state where it could be pushed or pressured. No, it needed its very own piece of land for its own safety and security. And that's what established the whole concept of a federal district.
These early years really set the stage for centuries of conflict. In 1790, a compromise puts the capital in the south. But here's the crucial turning point: the 1801 Organic Act. It declared that anyone living in the new district was no longer a resident of Maryland or Virginia. And poof, just like that, their right to vote for a representative in Congress, it just vanished. Then, after the British burned the city in 1814 and Virginia took its land back, the DC we know today and its central problem was locked into place.
Now, while the federal government was busy setting up shop, something else was happening. A real city with families and neighborhoods and communities was growing right alongside it. And this is where you get this permanent tale of two cities. And at the absolute heart of that local identity is DC's history as a powerhouse of Black culture. From its earliest days, it had a large African-American population. By 1970, it became a majority Black city, earning the famous nickname Chocolate City, a true landmark of Black art, activism, and community in America. Just look at the story these two bars tell. In only 50 years, the city went from over 71% Black to just 41%. Now, this isn't just a statistic. It represents a massive social and economic shift. It's the story of gentrification, of families moving to the suburbs, and of a fundamental reshaping of the city's neighborhoods, its culture, and its entire political landscape.
For most of its history, DC was basically run by a committee in Congress. Can you imagine? But the Civil Rights Movement ignited this powerful push for self-governance. The 1973 Home Rule Act was a huge victory. It allowed residents to elect their own mayor and council for the very first time. It finally gave the local city a real voice. But there was a catch, a huge one. Congress kept the ultimate veto power, the ability to strike down any law the city passed.
And that catch, that constant congressional oversight, it leads us directly to the central conflict that really defines DC today. It's a phrase you've probably seen on the city's license plates, and it gets right to the very heart of its identity crisis.
This slide here, it just lays out the inequality perfectly. A DC resident pays the exact same federal taxes as someone in, say, California or Texas. But while the person in California gets 2 voting senators and a voting House representative, the DC resident gets, well, nothing. No voting members in the very Congress that holds the final say over their city. It's a really profound civic contradiction.
And we are not talking about pocket change here. I mean, take a look at this number. In a single recent year, DC residents and businesses paid over $20 billion in federal taxes. To put that into perspective for you, that is more tax revenue than 19 entire states generated. So they're fulfilling all the financial responsibilities of American citizenship, but without that fundamental right of representation.
Now, you might think this constant political battle would just crush the city's spirit, but it's actually done the exact opposite.
It has forged this fiercely independent local culture that has absolutely nothing to do with the monuments and museums. It's a culture that kind of stands in defiance of the federal city.
This is the DC you are not going to find in a tourist guide. It's the unique, percussive sound of go-go music, the city's own native genre. It's the taste of a half-smoked sausage completely smothered in mumbo sauce. It's even the rebellious energy of its legendary hardcore punk scene. This is the authentic culture of a city that has always had to carve out its own identity.
So all of this, the history, these two competing identities, this centuries-long fight for representation, it all leads to the final, unfinished chapter in DC's story, the big push for statehood.
So, the modern statehood proposal is to basically carve out the residential parts of the city and admit them as a new state. And the proposed name itself, Washington, Douglas Commonwealth, is fascinating. It honors both George Washington, the founder, and Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist and a famous DC resident. That name alone just perfectly captures the city's complex, dual identity.
Which brings us to the final question. For over 200 years, Washington, D.C. has lived in this strange kind of limbo. It's both a federal district and a beloved hometown. It's a global symbol of American democracy, but not for the nearly 700,000 citizens who actually live there. So the question of whether it becomes the 51st state isn't just about politics. It's about whether America will finally resolve the fundamental contradiction at the very heart of its own capital.